The most awaited meeting in our economy has just happened. It happened on the 6th of February 2024. I know most people don't know the meeting that I am talking about. It is one of those meetings that normally happens just under the radar because most people don't know much about it. But the meeting happened on the 6th of February 2024. A lot of decisions, of course, were made, a lot of deliberations were made, and the determination of how the next few months of our economy are going to look like have already been made. So guys, what do you think I'm talking about? Or who do you think I'm talking about? We are coming at the backdrop of an economic downturn. Of course, the existing feeling among most Kenyans is that the economy is not doing that well. But you see, sometimes we have sentiments that are informed by political inclinations. We have a lot of our sentiments being influenced by the sources of information that we receive or we consume. And majority of the population, of course, consumes information from politicians and from social media, which definitely has all manner of things. But of course, the main source of information in our country should be the people who are tasked with leading the economic prosperity of our nation. And in this case, I'm talking about the National Treasury and of course the Central Bank of Kenya. So the meeting that I'm talking about is Monetary Policy Committee. They meet every 2 months of the year, and they deliberate on how the last 2 months have been. Of course, you know very well that the last 2 months have been characterized by increased inflation, of course, and the depreciating Kenyan shillings. So what do you think these guys said? What do you think these guys deliberated on? And what do you think is the future of Kenya in the next few months? Now stick with me. My name is Duncan, and I am welcoming all the new people, all the new subscribers to this channel, because what we do here, we inform the public. I pride myself as a public informant. I educate the public on matters I think they need to know, matters I think the conversations are being had at a very high level where the normal man, common mwananchi, does not really know what is happening. Going straight into today's content. So I know some people don't know much about the Monetary Policy Committee, or even better, some people don't know much about the monetary policy. So like I had said earlier, the country is run, or the economic fortunes of a country are determined by the kind of policy that the government of the day takes to influence economic direction. So there are only two policies in an economy, and we have the fiscal policy and then we have the monetary policy. The fiscal policy is directed by government, led by the president, but the monetary policy is directed by the central bank governor at the central bank. It is majorly determined by the Monetary Policy Committee, which is composed of the central bank governor, the deputy governor, and 2 members of the central bank who are appointed by the governor, and of course the public secretary, of course, of treasury. So with that understanding, you will now agree with me that these meetings are very important. And for you to know exactly what is happening in the country or what is forecasted for in the next few months, then you need to know what these guys are saying. And that is why I'm here today. I'm here to tell you what these guys are saying, because I live in this country, and on the ground, what I'm hearing, or on the ground, what people are saying, everyone is complaining. Every single person I interact with is complaining. They're not happy with the president, they are not happy with the present government, they are not sure of where the country is going. Majority of them feel like the country is going to the dogs. But the question is it true? Are the countrymen and women complaining for nothing, or are they justified? Are we living in a situation where the people who are leading the country are in another world versus where the actual people are? So let's see what these guys in the Monetary Policy Committee have said, and I hope that we shall learn a few things here and there. But in case you don't learn from this episode, don't shy away. There are many more episodes that are coming up that I'm almost certain that you are going to look forward to them and you will learn a lot. So one of the things I picked out from the Monetary Policy Committee meeting is they have projected global growth is expected to be 3.1% in 2024. That is an improvement from 2023, which was around 3%. So the global economy is expected to grow at a higher rate this year as compared to the previous year. So someone will ask me, but is that really what the Monetary Committee in Kenya actually determines? So they don't determine that figure. That figure is determined at a higher level. In this case, it is determined by the IMF, because they are the ones who have a bigger view at a global stage. They can see and they monitor all the countries that are members of the IMF, of course. So at the IMF level, in a report called the Global Economic Outlook, they have determined that the world will grow at a rate of 3.1% in 2024. And what does that mean? That means that growth will trickle down to almost all economies. Because the world economy is divided into three levels. We have the advanced economies, the USA, China, the UK, at that level. And then we have emerging economies. We have Brazil, we have South Africa, Russia, and then we have developing countries. So developing countries is where now countries like Kenya now fall in. So all these countries, they grow at different levels. But of course, you know how it looks like. The advanced economies don't grow at a very high rate because they have reached a point where that's why they're called developed countries. So their economies are stable. So most of the time you might not see very high growth levels. The countries that will give you very high growth levels, we are talking about the emerging economies and the developing countries because the ceiling is still very high. So they can afford to still grow at those kind of levels. So you will expect that developed countries will be growing at between 1.5 and 2%. But developing countries, you can find a country growing even at 8%, even at 9%. While emerging markets, you will find them growing at a rate of probably 4%, 5%. And that is why when you come up and do the average, then you find that the average will come to around 3.1. It is important for you to note that 3.1 is not like the best that has ever happened. Over the period between 2000 and 2019, the world has recorded an average of around 3.8%. So that means that we are not at the peak. We are not doing very high levels as we have done before. And it is expected because we are coming out of a very tough season where there was the coronavirus. So it is understandable, and we just hope that it will pick up because it is actually projected to grow at 3.2% in 2025. So if then it is projected for the world to grow at that level, so what are some of the things that they have recognized that might make the world not to grow at that level? They have said that there is a continued effects of tight monetary policy. Continued effect of tight monetary policy might cause the world not to grow at that level. When they speak about tight monetary policy, what do they mean? The monetary policy committee will tighten their money supply. They try to limit the amount of money that is circulating in the economy. And by doing that is to increase the interest rates and to increase the demand of the local currency. Majority of the countries are doing that so that they can be able to curb inflation. If the exchange rate now improves and stabilizes, then importing commodities will be cheaper and therefore they'll be able to curb inflation. So majority of the countries are trying to curb inflation through tightening the monetary policy. Anytime you hear the statement tightening the monetary policy, they're trying to deal with inflation. They're just trying to bring inflation down. So majority of the countries in the globe have been doing that over the last few months. And of course now, and when you tighten monetary policy, when you reduce money supply in the economy, interest rates will go up. And as a result, a slowdown in the uptake of money, which then will slow down a bit of the injection into production and into growth of the economies. So that is one of the risks. Majority of the governments are tightening their monetary policy. And by doing that, that is a risk to the growth that has been projected at around 3.1%. So like I've said, why are governments tightening their monetary policies? Protect their local citizens, of course, from inflation. So that is one of the reasons. The other risk they have said is the withdrawal of fiscal support in advanced economies. So I think the IMF has withdrawn fiscal support. Fiscal support comes in the name of debt. When they withdraw the debt, what that means is the government will most likely have to borrow domestically, or they will have to look at other avenues through which they can generate their incomes in the advanced economies. And normally what that does, it causes a shortage or a drop in money supply as well. That has similar effects as tightening of the monetary policy. So withdrawal of fiscal support in the government always has a similar effect as tightening of monetary policy. And it has a potential risk, of course, of slowing down that growth. And then, of course, the final risk that they have said that can cause the world not to grow at that level is the uncertainties from geopolitical tensions. You know very well that war, especially the tensions that are being experienced in the Israel-Palestinian conflict, it affects you indirectly. Majority of people look at these things as just news and as stories. Sometimes you watch them on TV as stories. You don't know how directly it affects you, because geopolitical tensions have the tendency of slowing down international trade, because trading partners tend to slow down on the activities they are doing in the global stage. So it means even importation of commodities might slow down. It might be inefficient. It might take longer period. Production might be slowed down because companies or manufacturers are not so sure whether whatever they are producing will get a market or will be requested or will be demanded. And as such, they might slow down a bit just to observe what is happening so that they don't have dead capital or dead stock. So geopolitical tensions normally have a significant impact on international trade, and that is a potential risk, guys. So at that level, we are done with what the global outlook looks like. That is what the IMF, of course, has given in their economic outlook of the globe. But now, what about Kenya? So that was a statement made by the MPC just to give us a view of what is happening around the world. Then they now come back to our country, Kenya specifically, where they are trying to tell us what is happening in Kenya. So, of course, inflation increased to around 6.9 in January. In December, it was around 6.7. So the question is, why has inflation increased? Why has prices increased between December and January? What do you think, guys? The answer is this. Whenever you're talking about inflation, it is divided into 3 segments. We study inflation in 3 segments. Food inflation. And then we're talking about fuel inflation. And then we talk about the non-food, non-fuel inflation. So anytime you think about inflation, it is important to study inflation from those different categories. How is food inflation? How is fuel inflation? And how is non-food, non-fuel inflation? So when you remove the inflation caused by food and you remove the inflation caused by fuel, how are the other commodities behaving? And the reason those 3 are separated is so that they can pin down the specific driver to inflation, because normally food and inflation, they are the major causes of inflation in an economy, because of course people rely on food. Food is a fuel for the human body. So people rely on food for survival. Fuel drives everything in terms of the operations of a country. Fuel is what drives vehicles, companies, all manufacturing processes are driven by fuel. So fuel by itself is a major factor when contributing to inflation. So it's important to monitor fuel separately, it's important to monitor food separately, and now you put up all the other elements together to call them non-food, non-fuel inflation. So in December, the food inflation rose to 7.9% from December to January, 7.7%. What does that mean? They have attributed that to seasonal factors. And some of the foods that have increased in prices significantly, of course, are things like cabbages, onions, tomatoes. And why do you think that happened? This is premium content, guys. I told you, you will learn, you will enjoy, you will want to know more. And because of that, do yourself a favor and subscribe to this channel. I will always be here to educate you and to impart knowledge in you that you can use it in your day-to-day life. Thank you very much, and I can't wait to see you again on the next episode.